Hi, True Crime Grapevine fans. It's me, Patty Lee. I'm going live at my old time around 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Why, you may ask? Oh, let me tell you. Number one, what are we drinking tonight, everybody? I'm drinking it's it's a grape bomb. What do I mean by that? Well, it's grape juice. It's a grape soda, and I dropped a little bit of Tito's in it. So here's to Friday night. Everybody drink. I mean, drink them if you got them, and if you don't have a problem. And otherwise, water, milk, whatever, tea. Mm, mm. I like grape soda, like that Fago sort of. This is a retro taste, like a retro production. Anyways, hi, I'm Patty Lee. My little channel here is I watch all the crime so that you don't have to. And then I'll tell you all about what happened today. How's that? I do watch crime all the time. I must admit, today I took a Hallmark break. That's right. I watched a little show called Secret Ingredient. And I must say, it was a nice palate cleansing. But then as I was getting ready, I noticed a lot of other channels only do lives, and Friday night is a big live time. You're probably on one now, and maybe you'll catch me on replay, and that is okay. Hey, please like, subscribe. That would be great. You don't have to watch me when I go live, but because there is too much crime and not enough time, instead of uploading once a week to tell you all the true crime that I watch so that you don't have to, I had to do it every night because there is just so much crime. Speaking of which, so as I was getting ready, there was crime in my little cul-de-sac neighborhood. Yes. And cops running around backyards with their lights out looking for it was a DV situation, but that can be really scary because you don't know. I have no idea if the guy was armed. I just know that he was really wanting to speak to his ex, really much, banging on the windows of the house, apparently. Couple doors down from me, but cops all up and down I live on a very quiet street, so it was a little freaky. And in fact, another neighbor called me as I was writing what I was going to tell you guys about tonight. So yeah, true crime came to me. I had my own true crime live, like live out my window in my neighborhood. So yeah, I played Mrs. Kravitz, stared out the windows a little bit. Really need a drink. Mm. So that was exciting. All right. So this is Friday. It is January 20th. Happy birthday, little sis. It's a great day. So what has happened in true crime? What I want to tell you about tonight is we're going to discuss a little bit about media and the Idaho 4 and what insatiable knowledge happens when you have a case where everybody wants to get in on it. Even maybe publications or sources that typically don't get in on true crime all the time, they're all in on the Idaho 4, as we have been since the beginning. But, Johnny come latelys in the big corporate media, and they're causing some trouble. So we'll talk about that. Alec Murdaugh is going to trial on Monday. It's voir dire. It's jury selection. So it's not the actual, I mean, it is part of the trial, but we'll be talking about some things that have come up. There's always hearings and decisions made prior to the court starting, and they had some interesting ones to talk about, including we got a schematic of where the bodies were found, and I have questions. Oh, the West Boys. We'll talk a little bit about that. The West Boys are Orson and Orrin West. They were the two boys. It kind of reminds me of the Athena Brownfield case, unfortunately. These boys were first being fostered and then adopted by this family who didn't report them missing allegedly for 3 months after their demise. So that is horrific. We'll talk about their upcoming trial and um, a little bit about the Milioti case. Not a lot. That's where I was reading about what happened today in day 7. This is the little preview of the court because they're in the preliminary hearing. It is much more detailed than typical preliminary hearings because it is a circumstantial nobody case, and we'll talk about that. And we'll talk about Carol Baskin. Do you remember that name? What was that song that Joe Exotic did? Something about Carol Baskin took him, whatever, like killed her husband, smashed him. I don't know. It was a funny song at the time. I mean, it's not very funny, but she is. It's weird because I don't know why it's hitting the news. Comments that she made in 2021 in Tiger King 2 have come back out, and we're all over Twitter. And it's kind of crime. It's kind of crime because now I think it involves fraud of some sort. I don't know. We'll talk about it. All right. So, case number 1. To Maddie Mogan, to Kaylee Gonsalves, to Xana Kernodle, and of course to Ethan Chafin. Raise your glass. Let's remember them. And to all their families, right? Of course. We're going to carry this pain for the rest of their lives. All right. So, what is going on with Brian BCK, Brian Christopher Kobacher? What is going on with him? Well, the problem is this is going on. Chitter chatter. And we see this in all the cases, right? Oh my gosh, I know this. This is supposed, and then because a lot of these sources in journalism, we've seen it before. Now there used to be a journalistic um, integrity where they would have to not just get something confirmed once, but like 3 sources before it was considered confirmed, right? And now they just go, I mean, I'm a YouTuber, but I don't think discussing a YouTuber's ideas, I mean, we're not investigators, right? I am very plainly somebody just like you who loves true crime, and I have a background in psychology, and I think I understand the legal system okay. So, I mean, I try to edutain about the cases, what's going on, and then like, what can we learn from them? Like tonight, I learned immediately lock all my doors because somebody was looking to hide, and I didn't want to be the place they were going to find. And most of my doors are already locked. So that worked out well for me. So things like that, that's what YouTube is good for. It is edutainment. Has to be taken with a grain of salt. But with the 24-hour news cycle, such as it is, right, they have to talk about something. And a lot of these cases, something horrific happens. There's a lot to talk about there. And then everybody's like ravenous. Well, what are they doing now? The police don't have anything. We don't know what the police are doing. This is familiar, right? And then as it goes to trial, things get shut down, locked down, because you need to have a fair and impartial jury. And you can't do that if they're being slammed constantly from all sides with unconfirmed ideas. And the ideas all are whoever's on trial didn't do it. They're horrible. They're a horrible person. They were always they're weird. They're this. They're that. So by the time a jury, even though they hear the evidence, then in their minds, it can, what they heard prior to being a juror on a YouTube, on TV, in a newspaper, they can think, oh, yeah, that's right. I know it is because I read it in a paper. And it can override the fact that they're supposed to be only considering what they heard in court because it all gets mushed up together. That's just how cognition works. And so in some countries, you're not allowed to publicly, like they aren't allowed, media may not talk about, they can't stop regular people, right? But media is not allowed to churn out not propaganda, but speculation, right? So and so said, so and so thinks from an inside source where you're not even sure who that source really is. So this week, two things came out. Now, true crimer, I will tell you what the juicy scoop on the true crime grapevine is. I'll let you know what people are saying on the grapevine, but I will tell you what is speculation, and I'm going to tell you why we have a problem now in the Idaho 4 case. Midweek, People Magazine. So people consider People, even though it's entertainment, it's like a trusted source. They said somebody in law enforcement was a source for them that said that they were looking into this Instagram where everybody said, yes, Brian had been following 3 girls. Now that's all down, so we don't know. But the source confirmed that he was following them and that he had DM'd one and she seemed not to have opened it. But oh my God, there's the connection. He's looking at them. And that apparently he liked Maddie, one of her posts on August 16th. So we know, according from the affidavit, the first time his car is in their vicinity, seen there, his phone is pinging, is August 21st, the day before his classes started at Washington State University. So August 16th, he's supposedly, allegedly, liked this thing. And then but the scuttlebutt was, and he direct messaged one of them. And maybe they didn't answer. That goes into the incel theory, right? Again, and let me remind everybody, you guys, incels it's a philosophy and they self-identify as an incel. It is not us, the watchers, the observers going, oh, you must be an incel because obviously you can't get any and you're awkward socially. The term was not well understood prior to this, and throughout this, it has, due to Brian Kohlberger's sort of awkward way of being and people saying he was socially awkward, which I think tends to the way he's described fits way more with a very severe introvert or somebody on the spectrum, not like I said, an incel isn't that good looking, cool people. They're not just like, oh, we know that you can't get any. You're an incel. You're obviously celibate, not by choice. I mean, how rude, and you don't know who's sleeping around with who, but the idea that he was a socially awkward, isolated person does not mean he personally identifies as being an incel. And that is a personal philosophy where they say they black pill, meaning they consciously go, well, that's it. No one's ever going to. The idea that regular people look at somebody who's awkward and say, oh, he's an incel is probably why people become real incels and develop that philosophy, because the in group versus the out group, the bigger in group goes, yeah, I can see that you're involuntarily celibate. Look at you. You guys, that's really rude on so many levels. But it also is how that philosophy became started, because they're like, see how everybody thinks of us? Well, I'm going to take that on now as an identity. And he had zero writings. Incels tend to be isolated to the point they don't become PhD students. They don't go far in school. They're sort of who you think of as, they're angry at life. They're not interacting and they're not furthering their life because they've already decided it sucks. So please look up and Google incel and then think about how it's being used in this case, because I am not saying that he wasn't an isolated person, and many serial killers, mass killers, hold grudges against groups of people and women. I mean, there's often a sexual component, and everybody of worth talking about this case, like Ann Burgess and Gary Bukata, is that his name? Like these psychologists, clinical criminal psychologists, have said use of knife, the way this seems to have been done, points to a sexual frustration, a sexual nature, where the knife acts as, a phallic symbol attacking because they're angry. But the idea of insult is a specific philosophy that I do not think Brian has spoke to anybody about. And these people talk about it. I mean, they post about it, they let you know. So I don't think he's part of that group. I hope that little I mean, I think it makes a difference. Um, so especially because incels tend to be violent, like the ones, Elliot Rogers, I believe there was the guy who ran over people with a van in Toronto. They do this and then they say, like, basically, society made me because like nobody would sleep with me and this is what I had to do to get, like, they want that sort of attention. So we don't want to contribute further to that by just calling anybody who is odd, awkward, or violent one of their group. Does that make sense? All right, I'm going off on a little tangent. I'm getting all hot and bothered. Sorry, I need to scone. Mm. All right. So beyond saying that he was an incel, which I just told you about that. The DMing thing goes along with everybody's preconceived idea already that it was because he was turned down, versus like he had a weird serial killer fantasy about people, which tends to be more with serial killers than just like, well, they're frustrated. Um, the other thing was the very next day, people had a new article out saying, this time it was investigative source, an investigator close to somebody close to the investigation, who was investigator, something, it mentioned the name investigator, and I'll tell you why I'm mentioning that the police knew that he had been to the Mad Greek, the restaurant where Maddie and Xana worked. And that, they know because he ordered this vegetable pizza and it was very specific. And so this worker was quoted, but also it was intimated that that some investigator was saying that the police had taken surveillance from the restaurant, that Brian had been there for sure at least 2 times. And that's then, so that's the connection. So we have, everybody's wondering what was the motive and how did he target them? What was the connection between them? And so people are, I don't think they're making it up so much as looking for any reason. And then like that becomes a story just because it's 24/7 news cycle and they need any story, even when it doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, was Papa Rogers him? Who knows? Did he call into some of the YouTube channels? Maybe. Did he write something on a blog about feeling weird when he was a kid? I don't think that's accurate, but maybe. But so what? What does that get us now? I mean, and we do want it. If you're like me, and if you're watching true crime, you are. Yeah, we want to know because it helps us make sense of something that's nonsensical. But what has that led to? Well, instead of waiting to find out in filings and at trial, and we know we won't hear a lot until it's closer to his preliminary hearing in June 26th. Now we had a gag order, and now the judge has come out with like a enhanced gag order. This time, this is why I emphasize investigators. For any investigators related to police, related to defense, related to families. So I don't know who was blabbing. I do think they'll probably get caught because, especially if they were related at all to the investigation and our law enforcement, because they were already under a gag order, and judges take that seriously. Um, I mean, if you're a lawyer, you can get disbarred. If you are a regular, I mean, you can pay a hefty fine. This is a case where they're going to have a hard enough time getting a jury that isn't so biased that they're going to have to move this trial, which they don't really like to do that. And so it just seems like people are so ravenous for this that they don't really care. So um, that is what we know so far. So again, we're not going to get a lot of new details about this case. What we're going to get is more and more of somebody leaking something, and the judge is gonna, and then the judge gets like, then they don't want us to hear anything, and then see, it's like, but there's that thing Dr. Phil says about you create what you fear. Now, even though his PhD was in whatever, that is one of the truest things I think he's ever said. When you worry so much about something, you actually unintentionally create it. Like when you really, like somebody who really, really wants a girlfriend and acts really weird, and then they don't get one because they don't know. You know what I mean? If you take that example, that kind of has to go along with this. Or, oh, anyways, I don't know. This is just sad because we want to hear about it, and we're going to hear less and less about it because people can't shut up and they keep leaking things. So, um, Alec Murdaugh. Okay, so case 2. Let's get on with what's happening Monday. So we are finalizing any hearings having to do with how the trial is going to go down and what they're allowed to, like, and presenting things and getting questions for the jurors. All that is, it's time to go. Monday will be the start of jury selection, which is called voir dire, which that's French to speak the truth. It just means that both sides get to ask jurors questions to see if they feel like they're biased or not. And the number one thing, it's like prosecution people want people who are more trusting of authority because they stand for the state and authority. And like the defense wants more independent thinkers, maybe even, people who've been in the situation where they've been wronged by the system, so each side wants people who are more likely to go along with their client's situation. Each side gets a number of strikes where they can say, I don't like this person. So there's a number where I believe you can just get rid of, and then the rest you have to have a real reason for it. And there are exceptions to the reasons. Like if you have a reason that doesn't seem sense, but it's like all, um, let's say Asian American women, every time one comes up, you have some excuse to get rid of them. They can start saying like, look, you are obviously being discriminatory because you're only getting rid of Asian women. So barring doing anything that's discriminatory, there's a number of people you can get rid of. Some you don't have to explain, and then afterwards you have so many, but you have to explain. And I think each state is different, and I'm not sure about South Carolina. There's going to be a million legal people talking about this. I think Gigi from Pretty Lies and Alibis is going to be there. I know, of course, Law and Crime will have somebody in there. The YouTube channel slash TV channel. Court TV will have somebody there. Mandy Matney and Liz Carroll of Luna Shark Productions, who does the Murdoch murder cases, will be in court. They have a dedicated seat. There's a number of people. I think ABC gave it. A number of people have said they get like one seat per day. And those were released on a list of approved things. And then other people could ask to be included. There's a lottery, and then they have an overflow area, but they still think this is in Waterboro, South Carolina, and it's not very big. And they think there's going to be a problem with parking, staging, where people are staying. It's going to be crazy. So part of the story you're going to hear on Monday is just the madhouse that is this trial of the century for South Cackalack. So what is happening? It is in Carlton County, and what's really interesting is Will this work for or against Alec Murdoch? Why do I say that? His family is from Franklin County, and they had a lot of prestige and sway, and people thought very highly of them before all this happened. But even though even though they understand how serious this is, they might still be willing to give Alec more of a benefit of the doubt. We shall see. So, or they could be more offended and angry with him because of personal reasons, or they knew one of the victims because it's a smaller county, and you know, then then it works against him. So we shall see about that. But it was not the venue was not moved. The prosecution, okay, wants to bring up the fine. That was a big fight that I don't know if that the judge has ruled on this yet. The prosecution very much thinks that they should be able to bring in all the financial crimes because they say it was the revelation or the imminent revelation of the financial crimes that was the impetus for doing what he did. I don't know if that timing works out great because I think he was approached at work in the later afternoon about his financial disclosure for the beach case. And I don't know then when he called Maggie to have her meet him at Moselle because she was at Edisto Beach. So I don't know if that timing all works out. I, I mean, it wasn't very premeditated if that was the real reason. And also, I just wonder, does that really help him having his wife and son murdered? It doesn't change his financials. I don't think they had that much insurance, so it wasn't like enough money to fix it either. Um, I mean, people might have felt sorry for him for a little time, but it didn't get rid of. He was robbing Peter to pay Paul, as the saying goes. He was also supposedly in a drug dealing Oxycontin uh, mill that he was also taking pills. So Alex had a lot going on, and we do know that if they bring up all the financial crimes, there's a bias called prior bad acts. I just don't if they are allowed to bring in all that, I would think it's a big appeal problem because now now people think, well, if you were screwing over so many of your clients, of course you probably did this. And that's not what we want in a court of law. Now, they aren't going after the death penalty in this case, which then makes it a lot easier to keep the case going. And there's less, not they still take so much care. But what I'm saying is, we know with death penalty cases like the Valadebo case, um, and probably the Kohlberger case. And do we have any other death penalty ones going on right now? They have to be so precise about every step because they want this to stick and it's going to be appealed anyways. And so they try to be very precise and circumscript about what they're doing. They are still being careful in doing this, but you know, they don't have to wait as long like for mitigation and all this other stuff because this is going to be life imprisonment if he gets the max. So, will they bring in the financial crime? I don't think that's been settled yet. I think it would be a bad idea. The other thing was the I already spoke about that. Okay. The other thing is they're fighting about the shirt. There was blood spatter on a shirt that Alec was wearing, supposedly, and here's the problem. When the shirt was first sent away, the expert looked at it and made a judgment that it looked like transfer blood, not like a spatter, blah, blah, blah. Then SLED, now they kept the chain of evidence, so it was then sealed, and then they wanted the expert to look at it again. The expert, they took it to the expert, flew it there, stayed with the box. The expert did look at it again I don't know why that whole thing happened. Could you look at it again? And then the second time, he said, "You know what? Yes, this does look like fine mist spatter. It looks like he was probably very close to Maggie because she was shot with a high power rifle, and it looks like he was close to her when that happened." Now, it's weird that whole second. I don't think any of us would be comfortable if an expert said one thing and then the police were like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. Could you look at it again? Just one more time." Oh, and then you give us what we want as the answer? That's convenient. I mean, maybe there was a reason, right? Uh, that's weird. The other weird thing about the shirt is that it was consumptive testing, which we've heard a lot about with regarding the Valo case. Now, in the Valo case, and it is a death penalty case, they are very careful not to use up anything. And if it's going to consume the sample, consumptive, they will make sure that the defense knows, and that if there's not enough for the defense to do a second independent test, that then the defense will be welcome to have their expert watch the state do the consumptive testing. In this case, the testing was done outside without the defense's knowledge, and it ruined the shirt, and there's nothing for the defense to test anymore. So those two situations side by side, the fact that one answer from the expert, then they visited him and there was another answer. And the first answer was not what the state wanted to hear, and then it was. And then we have the whole, and they did a test that consumed. Now, is Alec Murdaugh a nice person? Well, my opinion is he seems like a spoiled rich kid who wanted what he wanted and didn't care about anybody else. And I don't know if it was drugs or not, but he just seemed like a hothead, addictive personality, blowhard, frat boy that would never grow up type of personality. Now, does that make him, and I do think that Russell Lafitte's trial was accurate, and it seems that not only was he have an addictive personality and wasn't very nice, he was very much in financial cahoots and doing very naughty things. And it seemed like his whole family got used to doing, like, they didn't, rules didn't apply to them. It appears, my speculation, my opinion only. And so that this is a cultural milieu in which he and his children are steeped, which seems to have led to him just taking money where he wanted. Hey, why don't you sue me? I'll sue you. Like, finding all the ways to do little tricks to get money for himself. And then once he made money with somebody else, he'd be like, "Yeah, let me hold it." And then he'd move it into his own little thing. Not very nice person, right? But he did seem to love, if not his wife, which he did, but I mean, maybe not. That could all be faked. But his kid, he seemed to love his boys. So here's my other problem with this Murdaugh case. What we're learning now is there was a graphic that came out showing where the bodies were when they were found. And Maggie and Paul weren't too far from each other. Paul was just inside the feed room in the kennels, and Maggie was just outside the kennels. Maggie was shot with a high power rifle, and Paul was shot with a long gun rifle, not an automatic weapon. Maggie was shot with an automatic weapon, and Paul was shot with a rifle. And I thought they said it was from the property, which I think they might have that weapon. Anyway, here's my problem with the thing of Alec did this. One, I think Alec is somebody who gets other people to do his dirty work, like Russ Lafitte. I mean, he's not like a singular guy. When he wanted to, have a suicide attempt, oh, first somebody shot him, and then, oh no, it was me. I mean, he had Eddie Smith help him out. He seems to pay somebody to help him do things. Kind of lazy, kind of like a person who grew up rich and always expected somebody else to clean up his messes. So, do I think Alec could have hired somebody to murder his wife and I don't, Paul wasn't even supposed to be there. According to sources at the beginning, Paul stopped by to take care of a friend's dog that had been hurt. So I don't even think, I'm very confused by how this went down because there were two guns. There's two people that were shot close to one another. So Alec had an automatic weapon and like, why wouldn't you just, that doesn't make any sense. You would either shoot, you would have an automatic weapon and take out everybody, is what you would do. You wouldn't change to a shotgun. And a shotgun has to be reloaded. So once you unloaded it, two good shots, it has into one person, then you can't shoot the other person. Okay, but you don't, that makes no sense. I am wondering if Maggie was the intended victim, which maybe she was. That would make more sense. Paul got in the way. I've said this before. Paul had a rifle from the house. He heard something going on with his mom. He comes out and somebody just grabs the gun away from him and turns it on him. Could his daddy have done that? I just don't see him being, no offense, I don't see him being cold enough and like brutal enough. He kind of seems soft to me. And he really like I spoiled brat. He doesn't seem like somebody who could do that. And I think here's the other thing. We have this whole story about he was involved in drugs, either drug running and taking drugs, or he was doing something. We know that there is evidence financially that he had a OxyContin with Eddie Smith. He was like writing checks to Eddie, who would get stuff, bring it, like they were somehow moving around drugs. So I don't know, man. When you move around drugs, people don't like that shit, especially if they know you're going down for financial crimes. They might decide to, uh, you know, scrape out some justice themselves. I don't know. They're out on this huge property. The property that is close to the water where you could move drugs in and out. Was there a problem with the drug thing? And was Alex there visiting with his family to talk about, like, by the way, I'm going down for these financial crimes. We got to talk about this shit. I just got caught at work telling Maggie. Paul's there with his kid. Paul also supposedly Snapchatted. And it looks, you can hear like him and his mom and his dad walking maybe by the kennels. That doesn't go with, again, he just, how did Alec get two different guns? And if he shot one, the other person didn't run. They just stood there and waited for him to pick up another gun. That, I don't understand the logistics of this. That is not to say that Alex, I could see him hiring somebody to get rid of Maggie because he needs her money for something maybe. I don't know. Killing his wife and his son also, I don't see how that fixes his problems. I mean, I get how they say, oh, people would feel sorry for him. It would slow down the lawsuit. But Mallory Beach's parents were not leaving. They weren't going anywhere. And it was his boat. He was always going to be involved. So there's a lot about, I'll tell you what, Alex Murdaugh, in my opinion, thought he could do whatever the F he wanted. And he got in deep with all kinds of effed up stuff, money laundering, stealing, tax evasion he got hit with, of course, because once you have ill-gotten gain, the government's going to be like, yeah, you made that money, and so now you will pay us part of that. But that all makes sense, like a selfish, blowhard, kind of stupid, never had to work hard, partier who was just given everything, got into all this trouble financially, and people come after you. That is organized crime, what he was doing. And when you're involved in organized crime, especially if you're going down, you're not just going to go to jail, honey. Somebody's going to get their pound of flesh. That's what I think is much more likely. I also think it's very likely that everybody in South Carolina that had any ties to Alec Murdaugh is going to be glad to see him go away forever. They are cutting ties. They don't want to help him. They don't want to know him. So I don't think Alec is smart enough to have come up with this. I don't think I was smart enough. I don't think this really helped him. I don't understand the whole why this would happen. The only thing I said I could ever see is that he was going to kill Maggie and his son saw him and then he had to get rid of him because he was a witness, I guess. Maybe. I don't know. Again, we will see more in the trial. So we have Monday. So those are the things that are still bothering me. Um, that doesn't mean I like Alec. That doesn't mean I don't think he's a criminal and should go to jail for the rest of his life. And he will go to jail for the rest of his life, right? I mean, but we're all just interested in. But is he really the guy who did this? I don't know. I don't know. And his team wants Eddie Smith and Eddie Smith's failure to pass the polygraph when he was asked about, were you there at Moselle when Maggie and Paul were shot? And did you know who shot them or something? He failed some of that supposedly. And the defense wants that. And the prosecution does not want to give it up. It's kind of interesting because you can't use polygraph to say someone's guilty, but defense can add that in to say perhaps my client is not guilty because this other person didn't do well. It just is exculpatory evidence, meaning points to somebody else, perhaps. Also, they don't want the I don't know if the judge has. I'm sure. I think Monday we might hear this if it didn't come out today and I missed it. But the prosecution doesn't want. Not only can they not mention anything about any polygraphs of anybody ever, like they can't mention. Um, they can't say that it might have been somebody else, which I thought saying some other dude was like traditionally where every defendant went anyways, like putting doubt. Like that's how you get doubt in the mind of a juror. Well, perhaps this other person did it. And the prosecution's like, we don't want them to be able to mention that. We don't want them to be able. I don't. That is so weird because that's your defense. It wasn't me. It was somebody else. But you can't mention that, or maybe they don't want them to mention specific. I don't know how that's legal. We'll see how that turns out. Anyways, and we'll see if the new lawyer that the prosecution, that John Meadors, if he comes in, uh, blazing against Jim Harpootlian. Oh, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be like a Tennessee Williams play. Wait till you hear how these people are going to talk in court. It's going to be very interesting. So let's see. So it's going to trial, people. And I think we will hear, if we haven't heard, about all those things. Let's see. Yeah. Um, okay. So we will hear more about that Monday because it's all anybody is going to be talking about. Okay. The West Boys. I don't know if you remember this case. It was in December, right around Christmas, right before Christmas of in 2021. So right before 2022. There were still COVID restrictions. A family had moved from Bakersfield, California to California City, California, a little much smaller, and they had lived there a few months. And on December 21st, they said, "Oh my gosh, our two little ones are missing. Somebody took them. They were out in the back porch." And they said with chalk. And everybody's like, "Oh, the dog chalk," or was it like chalk on playing with chalk? But whatever. They had this story that these kids were missing. Well, the neighbor next door had a surveillance camera, and you could see the dad going picking up. He said it was cold. He was getting stuff to burn. But you never see the kids, and you don't really see him like looking around for kids, and you don't see a dog outside that he said. And it was really, really, really cold. So why would the kids be outside? And he was like, "Oh, because my wife was wrapping presents." And then the story just sort of fell apart. It never seemed right. And then we found out that they had adopted these children. And I'm not sure what's up with California, but the adopted family knew that that's who adopted their children that they lost. And the boys' names were Orrin. Well, they had been named Orrin and Orson West. Orrin was 4 at the time he went missing, and Orson was 3. Their birth names by their mom were Sincere and Classic. And again, I'm not clear on how fast that someone's parental rights could be taken away, and and if that happens, I didn't know that the family would know where the kids were. But anyways, the family knew and they showed up in California City very angry. Obviously, where are our kids? And it turned into the where are our boys call for action. And it took over a year. Trezell West, who is 36, and his wife Jacqueline, who is 33, were eventually arrested. It was found that they and we haven't heard the evidence, right? Because it's winding its way. We're going to have a trial in, is it in February, the end of January? We will have a trial, but there was supposed to be a hearing today, and the hearing was pushed back until next Wednesday. So I will tell you about then. But they said the children were, um, it seems like it's very strange. They had 6 kids. One of these children, but these 2 were biological brothers. One seems to have been accidentally killed, and then they killed the other brother, maybe so the other brother wouldn't talk about his missing brother, which I don't know, you're just compounding crime upon crime, but that's what they did. And I don't know how they were gonna explain that. It wasn't a very good plan. Anyway, that pretrial hearing, will be Wednesday, and I will let you know all about it. February 2nd is, when Judge Gregory Warner will hear, and resolved all motions by February 2nd. And oh, sorry, I think that might be about the Letitia Stout case. Where is this? The West Boys, oh, the trial is supposed to be January 30th. Sorry. Letitia Stout, another case, oh my gosh, of a stepmom who killed her son. She is going to hopefully go on trial March 20th. We've got a lot of trials coming up. And again, you hear that these happened in like 2019, 2020, 2021, that long ago. Kind of how these cases go. All right. So that's what's going on with cases coming up. The Carol Baskin thing, it's just kind of funny. If you were watching the trial, during COVID, the Tiger King Netflix series. I watched, I think, up to the 3rd or 4th one, and it got too dark for me, and it was no longer interesting to watch these people devolve. But of the 2 horrible people, I don't know, Carol Baskin bothered me a lot because she seemed to have started doing the very same thing Joe Exotic was doing, but she was, it's like somebody who quits cigarettes or quits, becomes a vegan instead of eating meat, and all they can do is look at the other person who used to be just like them and say how horrible they are. Anyways, she no longer believed in like using wildlife to make money from. She was whatever. And she had a husband who had disappeared. Well, Joe Exotic made up a whole song about Carol Baskin, killed him. What'd she say? Killed him, something, whacked him, fed him to his tigers, snacked him. I mean, Carol Baskin. It was a whole thing. So in Tiger King season 2, last year, apparently in 2021, she said, "Oh, and Homeland Security did contact me and say that Don Lewis, my husband, was alive. And so he was living in Costa Rica." Okay, nobody else said that but Carol Baskin. Nobody. Nobody. But people keep repeating this, and I don't know why it came up again on Twitter, but let me just assure you that the Hillsborough County Sheriff in Florida, which is the office that was responsible for Don Lewis's missing person case, which he was confirmed dead. He was like, they said he was dead in 2002. Homeland Security wasn't even created until 2003. So I don't know, like her timing is all off. Why would, and Homeland Security is not the agency that would say we found a American alive in a foreign country. That'd be more like the CIA. I mean, what she's got, like the FBI isn't even part of the Department of Homeland Security. So she's all over the place. I don't know why this is coming out again, but rest assured, true crime grapevine fans, Carol Baskin is still crazy as a loon, in my opinion, my speculation. But not my opinion, not my speculation, confirmed by the sheriff's office in Hillsborough County, Florida. Don Lewis hasn't been found in Costa Rica. All right. And Maya Miliadi, I'm going to have to do over the weekend. We have a funeral in my family, but by Sunday, I should be able to do an upload of the week. And then I will include what's going on. The Miliadi case, again, it was similar to the rest of the testimony that Larry was getting increasingly desperate to keep tabs and control his wife because he felt he was losing her, and his strategy was, I guess, stranglehold on her. And then they talked about the hearing that the children were outside, caught on surveillance very late the night of January 7th, 2021. Also, that there was sounds that sounded like gunshots, and that he was seen on surveillance the next morning putting his car in backwards into the garage as if he was putting something in his trunk, and then pulling away. This was like at 6:45 in the morning, and he didn't return until after 6 in the evening, only taking his 4-year-old and not taking his phone. So they went over some of that. Everything else we will talk more about. It has been a night. Hopefully, the little criminal in my true crime in my neighborhood is all over. I'll let you know if I hear any scuttlebutt. But it's been a very exciting Friday night. Everybody, if you're watching this on replay, could you please hit the like button? It would be great if you could maybe, I don't know, leave a comment. Tell me what you think about why is Carol Baskin lying about her husband being found when that's just a dumb story that we can check out. Why? And tell me what you think about uh, what's going to happen next week. And are they going to be able to seat a jury very fast? Do you think it's going to take all week, or do you think they're going to get a jury pretty quickly in the Alex Murdaugh case in the Low Country? Very exciting stuff. All right. And do you think People Magazine screwed up by just blah, 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 and then now the judge is saying nobody talk? I don't know, man. Was it worth it? Did you sell enough copies, People Magazine? Because now you ruined it for everybody, in my opinion. Just my opinion. Well, the person who ruined it, who has ever blabbed. All right. Anyways, sorry it was so late tonight, but I know there's a lot of really good YouTubers that go live right when I have changed my time. Maybe I need to change my time again. Put that in the comments. If you have a better time that you would actually watch live, that would be great. Let me know. All right. Bye.